Welcome back to Virtual School Assembly. Today, our guest is Anne Michael Smith. Anne Michael is an actress and a writer known for Scandal, Children's Hospital, and Army Wives. She studied special education and deaf studies at the University of North Florida. She is a Florida native, but now lives in Los Angeles, and she's also a new mom. So we have a lot to unpack today. Anne Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. It's nice to see you.
Yeah. So I'm excited when I kind of saw who you were and what projects you've been involved with. I'll admit the first thing that jumped out to me was that you study deaf studies. That's not just a normal thing. And I know now that you even run a little group and teach sign to moms, right?
Yes, moms and dads and families in general.
So I want to start with this. Where did that interest come from? Most people don't go into sign language, learn ASL or any other version of sign language. Where did that interest come from for you?
Well, to be completely honest, it originated in pursuing a language that I thought might be simpler to learn. I was tricked because all languages come with their challenges if they're a secondary language and you're learning them later in life.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually, in fourth grade, I had a friend, her name was Christy, and we just they taught us the alphabet and the Pledge of Allegiance. We just fell in love with the language. But I didn't really do anything with it other than I was, on the school news program together and we were signing. And then I got into college and was looking for my, language requirement and saw American Sign Language and just kind of veered down that path. At the time, I was an education major.
Mm-hmm.
Then I moved to special education and then realized I could marry the two.
Right.
And with acting, it really is about communication. It's about telling human stories. And what better way to do that than to study communication?
Right.
And sending a message to people with visual communication. So that's kind of how I stumbled upon it. I like to say I was led to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So when I was in college, I also took sign language, and a fun story about that. So have you ever seen the movie Napoleon Dynamite?
Yes.
So you know how they have a little bit of sign language in that movie? Well, John Heder, who was the main character in that movie, Napoleon Dynamite, he went to my college and we were in the same sign language class.
Wow.
And the fun thing about that, so a lot of people don't know that he's an identical twin. And he and his brother were both in this sign language class, and our instructor was deaf. And they would get away with so much because they'd pretend to be each other. So one day one would be there, and the next day the other would be there. And they would pull this over on our professor, who was the nicest man. I just remember he'd always say shim, he would say same, but he would try to sound it out, and it was so cute, shim, all the time. But this Napoleon Dynamite, I mean, he put one over on my professor. So it's funny to look back because then, he was studying that in college. And then as he got into acting, he brought that into what he was doing as an actor, which is kind of cool.
That is cool. I mean, they must have gotten away with so much. I would love to send someone in to, do all kinds of things for me.
Yeah. Now, you're doing a lot with sign now, which I think is cool. I actually watched one of your YouTube videos where you were teaching sign. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing with parents and why are you working with parents in particular when it comes to sign?
No, it's again one of those things I almost fell into when I first came to Los Angeles. I was looking for something to do that allowed me freedom to audition, but also felt rewarding. It felt like I was giving to families. It felt like I was of service to people.
Mm-hmm.
And just ended up finding my way to some really beautiful families. And then, of course, got to be a part of seeing a new parent with their tiny little baby and all of the cool moments that come with that. It's a really special time to meet someone and then walk with them. And that just kept giving and giving and giving more to me than I feel like I was giving to them. And so I've just continued doing it. But it's taught me so much. Anything you do teaches you. I mean, you're a teacher. Right?
Yeah.
Anything you do teaches you. And so that's kind of how I found it. And then I just teach them the basics of communication, right? So in this world where we always have our phones in our hands, which are obviously very beneficial, it makes us stop and focus. A big part of sign language is eye contact, which is a huge element of the bond that you develop with your baby. So even just the idea of stopping, looking in your baby's eye and saying, I love you, or saying milk, it's time for milk. Is such a, you're giving them such a gift of connectedness that increases their sense of safety and well-being, which decreases tears and frustration and all kinds of, and cortisol levels, right? So it just is a benefit to everyone, from the baby to the mom or dad, who are also looking for something to do, right? Like your baby, you're like, do we sing Itsy Bitsy again? And it's nice to give something that activates their brain, right? They are learning a new language, but also is something to do in the middle of the day when you've stared at this beautiful being for 10 hours already and you're like, what do we do now? So,
now sign language is something that I wish more people were interested in, because as we talk about communication, you're talking about communicating with a population, babies that can't talk yet, right? And so sign language is amazing in that area because you can start communicating through signs before you can communicate through words. The same goes with special needs. So you have a background in special needs, and a lot of children with special needs do really well with signs because it's an easier way to communicate. We even do that with animals. I mean, if I want my dog to sit down, I can say stop, and sometimes she will stop. But if I say stop and go like that, she will sit for me every time. And so it's an important part of communication. Now, we talked a little bit before the call on asking for help and in serving. And I want to talk about serving first, and then we'll circle back to asking for help. But when you serve, sign is one way that you can serve populations that are underserved, right?
yes.
So people who struggle to communicate. Have you seen in your own life benefits of serving these unique populations that have a harder time communicating?
Absolutely. You know, there's benefits that you give to them just by giving access, really between two different people. But honestly, the benefits come, I feel like they come to me. I get to meet and speak to somebody that not a lot of people get to.
Right.
I get to be in scenarios, like interpreting at a church, for example, where you just get to meet someone that you would not have had a conversation with otherwise, right?
Right.
And we're such a visual culture. And visual beings that, like you mentioned, speaking with your dog, having so this is the sign for stop and sign, just so you know, which you might remember, but it feels more cathartic to communicate, right? Even I'm so used to talking with my hands that they move a lot, but even when I'm trying to make my point, they get involved, right?
Right.
And so, you know, I think it's something that it benefits all of us to be able to communicate with the most people possible. And when you can understand what they're saying, I think that's a benefit and a gift, right? Because I cannot imagine walking out of my house and only having, well, now I can because we're in quarantine, but only having, 10 people that you could even interact with, right? Beyond hi. Because most people, there's a, universal gesture that we understand, but so that's something that in being of service to them and attempting to give them access to a hearing culture, I just want to be very clear that I don't think they need hearing people. I think they'd be totally fine without us, right? But it is an honor to bridge communication when you can, or when it is missing, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Now, I love that sign is a way to serve, and it's a way to communicate. As an actress, you serve in different ways. I mean, we usually think of actresses as entertainers. You're simply there to entertain, but the reason we do entertainment often is to share a message or to provide this visual medium that will enrich our lives. So as an actress, first, tell us a little bit about how you got into acting, but then as the second part of that, how do you feel like you can reach people as on screen as opposed to just face to face or live interaction?
Oh, yes. Well, stories are so powerful. And then visual stories are tremendously powerful.
Hmm.
So I think a lot of actors are just, we come out that way. So I didn't even find my way to it. I just was it, from the
Hmm.
very beginning.
Yeah.
And then trying to find my way through it in life, is a whole different ball game and story. One that took me from the Southeast to the West, with a bunch of cool lessons in between. But in terms of being of service in acting, there's, not only does it come with a platform where you can share a message of hope and ideas of how other people can succeed in what they're setting out to do, how people can find happiness, but
Hmm.
also one of my biggest loves of it is that no matter what role I'm playing, the goal is to let people not feel alone in the human experience,
Hmm.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
we think what we're feeling is not normal, especially when we're young. I think, and even now when we get older, we can feel really alone in those things. And so, any story that shows grief or heartache or hope or healing or addiction is one that can, I think, foster awareness that you're not alone, offer you the opportunity to reach out to someone at that point, and give you communication or language to talk about whatever it is you're experiencing, right? Whether it's a positive feeling, emotion, or journey, or a not so positive one. So yeah, that's it. Just stories are powerful. They're
Yeah,
powerful.
they certainly are. That's cool.
Yeah.
And I love that you bring that out, that it's a way of connecting with humans, because we all feel vulnerable. We all have weaknesses. And often it's through a media like television or film where we feel like we're not alone anymore. People understand us, and that's a cool way to serve. Um, I told you earlier we'd circle back then to asking for help. We talked a little bit before about how one thing that kids really struggle with is asking for help, and getting help. And we both wish we had done more of that as we were younger. Asking for help, it would have set us up. So I want to just know a little bit more about your thoughts. What does that mean, asking for help, and why is that something that you care about?
Yeah, it is something that we both talked about wishing we did a little bit earlier in
Hmm.
life. I loved the story of your daughter and her reaching out to ask for help, and not just ask for help, but what that led to was her accomplishing something really, really cool.
Right.
And that, I think, is what is so beneficial for asking for help, right? People want to help each other. We want to know someone's goal. It's easy to get behind somebody when you see their passion or their hope. What you're doing right now is in service to so many people. And then anyone you asked who's been on the show has wanted to help you and your passion and further your goal, that is also helping students,
Hmm.
in this time of, I guess, tumultuous time in our in world. And so I think what I wish someone had told me earlier was, as soon as you can, ask for help. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. And like you mentioned, you can ask for help in 1,000 ways. You can go to the top person, right? If I wish that when I was 14, I was writing directors and producers. I wish I was
Hmm.
engaging with other storytellers. I didn't know to do that. Now I've met some incredible storytellers that have taught me so much and helped me get to the next step. And then there's also, and this is the part that you mentioned, was asking the person who's just a step ahead of you, or 2 steps, or 10 steps, right? When I first started, I was in an acting class with a good friend of mine. Well, he's now a good friend, but at that time he became a mentor.
Hmm.
And he kind of helped walk me through, finding an agent, finding my first agent. And we ended up both moving out to Los Angeles within a month of each other, completely unplanned. Um, but, and then now my friends that are peers, right? We help each other with everything from what to do next to how to shoot your self-tape to remedying a light problem or a microphone problem, and finding a way into a character, or someone else has life experience that you don't have, right? In my job as an actor, that can help me reach a character I didn't know how to get into, right? Before I was a mom, talking to a mom. I'll never forget one of the first SAG National commercials I booked was a mom role. And the reason I think I booked it is because a friend of mine was a mom, and what she made me realize was moms are not always smiling. That there's just they are tired. Sometimes we're tired, right?
Yeah.
And they very much love their children. I mean, you have several of them. So I went in for that audition, and I took away the big, huge smile and just tempered it a little bit. And I wouldn't have done that without knowing someone else's story, without them helping speak into my life. And then also as a human, it helps us to know, hey, next time, be more confident in that conversation. I know you emailed the person that you want to meet with or audition, but why don't you call him? That's a little bit of advice I received from people along the way that was from their life experience. So I think no matter what you're doing, the real goal is to try to be of service of others, right? So that you get a reward, whether you're successful in your actual goal, or you're going to still get rewarded along the way. But then you're also asking for help, because then you're growing individually, right? Personally, and just going further and further and further together. I think further together is what asking for help really gets you.
That's cool.
Yeah.
This is an important message. So you kids listening to this at home or watching this at home, the real important thing here is asking for help doesn't have to be hard, and it doesn't have to be scary. You can take small steps, ask someone that you know for help, and then work your way up. I think when I was younger, I was just so terrified to ask anyone for help. And so it held me back from doing things. And if I just asked my best friend, hey, have you ever done this thing before? I would have got that help, and it would have got me further along. So it doesn't have to be scary. Now, go ahead.
And it doesn't have to be scary, but also you don't have to be perfect before you ask for help. I think that's something that I run into personally, is I'm like, oh, well, I don't even know the question to ask, or I don't even know how to ask the question. And just reaching out, even on Instagram, right? Just to a friend or a peer or an influencer or somebody that you just, hey, do you know this? Or can you connect me to someone who might know about X, Y, or Z? But you don't have to draft the perfect email, make the perfect phone call. You don't have to research how to make the phone call. Action will inform your next action. Just pick up the phone and make the call, right?
Yep.
I think people really respond to imperfection.
Yeah. Well, and I know that better than anyone, because that's the reason we're talking, right? I reached out on social media and I said, hey, I have this channel. We talk to kids. Would you be interested in coming on? And you said yes. And so we know that it works. Just asking for help, it works.
Absolutely. And here we are, both having a beneficial experience, and get to meet you and hear some of your stories. And it's cool. And then hopefully it's influencing others.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a great message, and I'd love to end with that, it's great to serve. It's great to communicate with others and to serve, but it's also okay to ask for help, and don't feel like you can't do that. We can all ask for help, and it's going to get us further ahead. Now, Ann Michael, if kids want to see what you're up to and connect with you, is there a social media platform that you're on, or do you have a website or anything where they can find out what you're up to?
Yes. My handle on Instagram is @AnnMichaelS. So that's pretty much my main cool. Platform. Perfect. These days. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll link that up. Thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure. I appreciate what you're doing, and wish all of you watching the best.